time to begin our March 17th, 4 p.m. meeting. This time we'll call ourselves to order. And Larry, we'll turn it over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of City Council. I believe Bridget's handed out a form that I'd invite you to use to prioritize initiatives or services that you hear about today and those that you may have heard about 2 weeks ago. I do appreciate your feedback. This afternoon's session is a continuation of the March 3rd presentation series. As a brief recap of the March 3rd session, there were two theme presentations. The first was facilities, which indicated that existing centers are being used adequately, and that the city should improve the alignment of programs with interest and demand. We should adjust or eliminate programs lacking adequate following. And third, we should develop facility support clusters of neighborhoods. The second theme is a branding initiative that can energize our team, build a cohesive message content, and help unify our efforts to develop a message that, or identity that distinguishes ourselves. From the three SWOT presentations, my takeaways were for HR, human resources, that compensation in the form of pay and benefits is and will increasingly affect our organization. Finance felt the impact of technology and policy obsolescence. And fire has staffing shortfalls and feels the effects of inadequate compensation. This structure that you saw or heard on March 3rd involved two types of presentations: theme or non-SWOT in nature, and then SWOT or strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The theme presentations focuses on challenges across departments or across the community, and the SWOT assessment presentations gives you more of a department level perspective. This slide gives you an overview of the remaining presentations and dates and topics. Today, there are three theme presentations and a few department SWOTs programmed for this afternoon. Among them include employee retention strategies, master plan implementation, and industry recruitment, acquisition, and airport as a catalyst. And they will migrate into the department SWOT presentations. April 7th, we hope to tee up for you deferred maintenance and staffing challenges as two theme presentations, theme-based presentations. And then hopefully we'll try to wrap up the SWOT presentations on April 7th. However, if we have not finished those, I'd like to ask the board to consider setting a workshop date for the 21st. Today's presentation will be will be led by Deborah Reed, who will give us a presentation on employee retention strategies, and she'll lead this off for us. Following her will be Lisa Steinwinter on master plan implementation, and then Chris and Peter will give us some insights on economic development theme. So at this time, I'd like to invite Deborah to the podium.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. I greatly appreciate you giving me an opportunity to stand before you this afternoon to talk a little bit about our employee retention strategies, and to also thank you for providing our employees with the 3% increase. They seem to appreciate that, and I just want to make mention as we go through. The agenda that we will follow this afternoon is the employee turnover, reasons employees leave, strategies for employees retention, peer competitors of personnel, performance-based merit program, pay for performance, and classification and compensation study. We have an annual employee turnover rate. I went back for the 5 years from 2010 up to 2014. The second line shows our full-time employees and the total number that we had during that time. And then I have the number of employees that left the city, and then the turnover rate for the city for the annual year. The above numbers are calendar, and a turnover is due for many different reasons. That's retirement, better opportunities, different career choices, better salary, reduced cost and insurance, could not get along with the supervisor, performance issues, working with less and required to do more, which affects life balance. And the economy was good, so a lot of employees decided they would make a move at that time, and some of it was involuntary termination. The local rate for turnover is 8.2, and this was found across industry lines, and also for region it was 15.6%, and that was found through the Bureau of National Affairs in Washington, D.C. The annual turnover rate for the South region, the Southeastern region, is 22%. That was a survey done by NetScott survey. It was about 3,000 participants in the survey. And then the government industry was 15% based on about 1,800 participants in the survey. And looking at department turnover, and this is alphabetized if you look across left to right. It is alphabetized. For department turnover, I'm going to look at not so much the percentage, because sometimes the percentage is a little tricky, because some of the smaller departments, when they lose someone, the percentage looks really high. But if you look at 4 of our departments, and I'm going to take fire, police, energy services, and water resources. And I'm going to look at the last 3 years. When you look at the last 3 years, the fire department actually lost 14 employees. Some of them were for compensation, some of them was for benefits, performance, and competitors. But they also have to run their trucks with 4 employees instead of just the 3. So it puts an impact on the department itself. The police department, they lost 13 employees over the 3-year span. And that was due to compensation, competitors coming out to get our employees, and performance. Energy services, they lost 13, same thing, compensation, benefits, competitors, and performance. And then water resources lost 17, one of our highest, and that also includes compensation, benefits, performance, and supervisory issues. We cannot expect turnover. We can always expect turnover from our retirees, so we should be able to plan for that. There are times when career expectations cannot be met. Some of our employees are looking for different things. And this is also due to the design of the city's classification and compensation grade table study. When the classifications change, compensation remains the same. It limits employees from growing. The city's best defense is to stay competitive with the compensation and costs of living and be consistent in how that plan is set up. The amount of increases are not so much as important as being consistent across the board. We reviewed other municipalities, and they seem to increase their employees by 1 to 3%, but it never really go down to 0, except for closer to the time period when the economy was really bad, and that was around 2011. Here's another chart. This is for Park and Recs area. Even though they're larger, they're not showing a big number in terms of increases over the 3 years. I just happen to break out the various units within the Park and Recs area. Reasons employees are leaving. If the work of an environment is not comfortable for whatever reason, the employee will not feel good about their work. Employees have to feel valued and appreciated. Money sometimes does not keep them. Employees want to do a good job and excel. When they excel, or when they can excel, this is not an acceptable level, and when you are trying to excel, you must have something to reward them in terms of the new responsibilities that they're taking on. Employees want to be better tomorrow than they are today. Employees want opportunities to grow and learn and advance in their careers and to work on challenging and interesting projects. Employees want to feel a part of something that adds value. In looking at TC2 as a consulting firm, they indicate that many of these areas are things that an organization should maintain in order to keep their employees. The main reason our employees leave is because our plan is inconsistent. We have a grade table that is competitive, but when you don't have a way to move our employees within that grade table because you don't do a merit increase, they kind of sit. And so when you're trying to hire people, you're hiring them at the midpoint, and employees are not moving, so therefore you create a compression area. So we have to make sure that our merit program is consistent and not necessarily taken away every other year.
Ma'am, ask your question. When you talk about merit, give me an example. What percentage? 1%, 2, 3?
Well, based on our merit pay program, it goes from 0 to 4%, so that's based on performance. So anytime, and I actually put a chart in your information so that you can see how we look at it, but it can go from 0 to 4% based on what an employee actually performed throughout that year. So everybody doesn't get a 4% and everybody doesn't get a 1%.
Excuse me, I ask a question. On that merit, who makes it? Is it the immediate supervisor makes the decision? Who they think merits a raise?
Well, it's a performance tool that's used, and that supervisor is responsible for filling out the performance tool to determine where that person averaged so that they can select what the percentage is.
Is there any room in that scale for personalities to affect that person's raise?
Well, when you look at any type of performance tool, there is always some room for having a little personal input in there. And I think that's been over the years. Performance tools are not quote 100%, but it is a way that you can at least recognize and sort of, if someone is not performing well, we ask that they use the corrective action to show an employee where can they improve versus just saying, well, you didn't do it this way or you didn't do it that way.
Do we have a certain amount of money that's all put into that right now?
No, that's part of the problem. We haven't been funding.
How many years has it been since we've done a merit increase? It's been
Since 2008, we got a merit increase, and
it
then
wasn't a big one, was it?
no. It was a regular merit in 2008, and then all the others. In 2012, we got a 46%, where it wasn't even half of the actual merit.
Question then, in 2008, how much money was in our budget for merit increases?
I don't know if that was about, was it 300,000, Lisa?
It wasn't a lot.
It wasn't a lot, but I know 2012, we went down to 46%. And that wasn't even coming up to half of what a merit would be. And we just did that in order to make sure that we recognize employees because it had been so long.
In other words, the compensation of our employees has been stagnant.
Yeah.
When people come in, they're making what some people that have been here 10 years are making.
Right, and then we try to adjust those that have been here so compression won't happen. But we shouldn't have to do that every time we hire someone. It just creates a burden.
One question. In looking at your neighbors, Concord, Albemarle, Morrisville, Salisbury, where do their merit pay stand right now? Do they have money put into their program each year?
From what I recognize, most of the areas do. I don't have the survey on that particular one yet. But most of the ones that I looked at when we go through the listserv, they've actually averaged somewhere between 1% and 3%. So no one has actually stood still that I know of at this point.
Be interested to know, if you don't mind, to find out what they put in their budget each year.
Exactly.
Because that's who you compete against.
Exactly.
For your employees.
And Charlotte.
The county gave one last year, did they not? What was it, remember? Okay,
Sure don't.
just curiosity.
I'd like to go back just a second to the question that got at what degree bias or personal bias may get into the evaluation process. Something that we do, and I've seen other organizations do, is that the management team's involved. So it's not necessarily limited to just say the first line supervisor. It goes up to the department head and comes to my desk. Second point is that for evaluations that are indicating performance above or below meets expectations, there's a narrative that's required. So just shoot from the hip saying this person walks on water, or this person's a, forgive my French, a dirt ball. They got to explain why. And if it doesn't pass mustard, it's gonna, I'm gonna kick it back.
Yeah, and I think I was referring to whether you have some subjectivity in there.
I think there is subjective.
You can't really control. I think that's the question I was
Yeah,
trying to
I
answer,
think-
but
But one thing too is the immediate supervisor can give them an excellent, anyway, it can be really good, their evaluation can be excellent. But once it gets overchained, the next person says, you rated it too high, you've got to take it down some. So see, by the time it gets up to management, it's already maybe have been marked down at least a couple of times because the immediate supervisor says they're excellent. They walk on water. By the time it gets to the other one, and it's to fit within these guidelines of what we say we can give. Well, that's what I have seen.
well, as Larry mentioned, we do try to look at them, every last one of them, in terms of reading them. Can't measure what subjectivity goes through what, and I mean, that's been history throughout the years for any performance review. But it is a tool that we gauge to at least come close to measuring what the performance is for an employee.
So we need to be proactive rather than reactive.
Exactly.
Proactive means we're always up here with our competition. If we're reactive, maybe we wait till the last minute and try to jump in.
And I think that's where we are now. We've actually stood back for a while, and it's getting harder for us to hire people because we can't meet their expectations, and then we cannot bring them in over people who've been here for a while in the same position, so it makes creativity for recruiting.
While we pull back, and I may be wrong, but I believe we pulled back in the recession.
Mhm.
That's where it all started.
Yes, 2008.
All right, I'm wondering how we compare, as Lynn was talking, and I don't mean particular in each category, but I feel like that all cities in our size especially, is basically they have done the same thing in order to get the bottom line on the budget.
Yeah,
I cannot believe that all these other cities around us, with the situation that we had since 2008, 2007, or 2008, with the budget problem, that they're all about in the same boat.
Yeah, but what they did that we didn't do is, from just looking just off the top, and we can always do a survey with them, is that they gave the minimum that they could give. They didn't just stop.
And we
So
stopped.
if they were giving 3%, they went to 1%. And the only time I remember everybody stopping was when we were really in a crunch of the economy being really bad. But right now, that's who's recruiting. They're recruiting our people because they can offer them a higher salary. But they didn't stop totally. And we can do some research on that.
Well, Deborah's got a later slide that's going to get into a tool that we'll use will evaluate, whether it's what degree it's across the board or by position.
What did the platform do?
Let's see, they had, I arrived in Whiteville in 2009, and I want to say 1 or 2 budget cycles before then, they did somewhat what you outlined. They did nothing or next to nothing. I arrived and I reintroduced basically what amounts to pay for performance, 0 to 4%. If you peaked out performance.
And you did that every year you was there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, but have we lost employees to other municipalities?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
More competitive jobs.
To every department, pretty much. And I'll get into that. That's my next slide. Okay, so in order to retain our employees, we must create and maintain a workplace that attracts, nourishes good employees. And I know that most of our employees have really been very dedicated. They didn't really start leaving even when the economy was bad. That's when they really stuck it out with us, maybe because they couldn't go anywhere else. But our employees, when it got bad, they really stuck with us thinking things would change. So when you hear people leaving sometimes now, it's like, I did the best I could, and now, I need to go do what I can do for my family. So, and that's why you can almost tell it's been a little while. So we just need to make sure that these components, employees who have relationships with an organization, they tend to stay. We have probably some of the best employees that anybody could ask for, and so we do really want to retain them. Employee support involves giving employees a total to help them equip themselves to do the job. They also have to have some type of buy-in to everything. You know, we're going to give them equipment to do the job, but their minds have to be there too, and they have to be dedicated to trying to do the job, because we're serving all these citizens and trying to do programs out here, so we want our citizens to be happy. We also want our employees to be happy at the same time. Good employees want to develop new knowledge and skills and to improve their value in the marketplace and enhance their own self-esteem. Employees' compensation pay is essential to employees for their time. Totally, it is important for us to use the pay for performance in every position. Every position is important. We made certain decisions, but we have to make sure that we look at every one of our positions so that employees are recognized. To retain employees, the compensation plan needs to incorporate this trend. Performance merits pay, and pay for performance comes in various sizes. The basic two things in performance is that you want to involve two basic activities. Defining the job. Our jobs have to be changed really a lot now. But we want someone who can actually look at all of our jobs and make sure people aren't doing more than they should be doing. Or if the jobs change, we try to do that on a manual basis since we've had the survey. Departments will say, well, this job changed, and we'll get together and try to look at the market and see what they're paying. So we've been doing that on a manual basis, but there might be some jobs that we really can't get to. So this is going to be important that we look at our jobs, and also is checking the performance against those jobs. So those are the two key performance issues that we have to look at when we're talking about our merit pay program. And looking at peer competitors, well, I hear a lot about these organizations, and Union Power, Duke Power, and Pike Corporation normally recruit many of our employees from the Energy Services Group. Don has a hard time trying to keep his employees because they're trying to go over there. And the interesting thing is private industry, so sometimes they can give a lots of perks that we can't give. But when I look at some of the data that I was looking at, it looked like municipalities were really consistent for years, being able to reward employees, and then when that fall came, we stayed there. So now the private industries are being able to pull because we were considered more consistent. They were like, you know, whistles and bells, and you can just bring people on, and whether it lasts, you know, we have some employees wanting to come back too. So, but these are the companies that are actually chasing our employees. Union County and other municipalities recruit from all of our departments. Okay, so we have that every day that somebody's coming in, and we're a good training ground. So they're looking for our employees, and they're being successful at this point in time. But I think there's somewhere along the line that we can change that. Our performance-based merit program, Pay for Performance, the program is aimed to build the organizational environment by encouraging employees and managers to reach the goal and to pay the best employees. It is more than just a tool. It is a philosophy of the organization to reward the best performing employee and to remain competitive. It is not isolated from compensation or benefits, because when our benefits increased and then we didn't change our compensation, even if employees thought we had a good plan, they still had an issue because their pay was not keeping up with the benefits. So therefore we created another concern. So it sounds like the benefits was the issue, but it really was more, can I afford it? This will allow cities to provide a consistent work environment, more satisfied employees who bring innovative ideals and solutions. This cannot be based on exceptions, poor systems, or inconsistent systems. When this program becomes a household word, and it used to be, our employees can depend on it throughout the organization. What we don't want to do is have our employees not trust that we have their best interests, and I think that might, a little bit of that might be going on because of the inconsistencies. The purpose of the performance-based merit program is to establish and maintain an equitable and flexible program that would encourage employees of the city of Monroe to strive for excellence. The city has such a program, and it has been found to be a little bit inconsistent at this time. I actually provided you a handout that goes over how our points, how it's calculated to get an increase, what's required. But in there was a guideline, and what it said was that the city's guideline indicates that the mayor and the city council will do the following. It will support and protect the integrity of the program, including making supportive statements to the public about our performance program, provide resources to support the program, and understanding of how the program works. It should look like this. I know you're looking for it. It's a handout that looks like this, and this actually covers everything that we expect from our managers, from the city manager, from the council on how this program works. If you've never seen it before, it's a good opportunity in your leisure time that if you read through it. Classification and compensation study. We put that on hold a couple different times. With the classification study, it will help us to rewrite current class job descriptions. It'll do a benefit analysis and a market survey to see where we really fall. So we can do small little surveys, but when they do a larger survey, they're doing surveys that with municipalities that are like size so that we know who's trying to recruit our people. Update salary schedule, review of internal equity issues, independent job analysis, estimated financial impact on what those options would be if we had to choose, and we've gone through that in 2008 when we had to choose what plan would best work for us. And to get started, we would use Springstead Consulting, which would cost us about $34,000, and they have some other expenses which are about $4,000. And once the city determines what plan best fits, then they would give us options and we can select from those. The study is needed to upgrade how we pay our employees. Springstead recommends that we conduct the study every 5 to 7 years. We did the last one January 28, 2008, and this upcoming budget period, it'll be 8 years since we did the study. So that's a long gap in between understanding how we compete with other municipalities or organizations. What does this matter? Other organizations will recruit our employees for their skills and their abilities. Employees are dedicated, but they like to experience growth. Salaries sometimes makes people determine what their wealth is. And so our performance-based merit program pay for performance is inconsistent. We should make it consistent. If compensation levels fall below the regional market, there will be difficulty in hiring, and we'll have increased turnover, and we're right there. We're right there where all that's happening. And looking back, the only average market I could find where they were moving, I found it through a Mercer Consulting, which was about 2.7% that companies were increasing as an average. The North Carolina pay in that study was $48,000, and the market was $50,000. So we were like under like 3%. So we're lagging behind in various areas. The city, just for a recap, the city in 2008, regular merits, which means that the employee can earn from 0 to 4% based on performance. That's what we had in 2008. 2011, the cost of living, which was a 3.9%, it was a lump sum, so therefore it did not change the employee's hourly earning. 2012, the merit was 46%. We used performances from 2008. We averaged them, which if you make a grade level 8 and you average it, you're still going to come out with the same thing. So we collapsed 3 performances together and allocated only 46%, which means that it was only half of what someone's true performance was being recognized for. So if there are any questions, that kind of concludes.
I have one, and it's a given that we haven't been given merit raises or other raises. Have there been other incentives not related to money that we incorporate to help keep our employees or help them make them feel appreciated?
Well, we have all kinds of programs. We have gifts when they get thank yous. We have gifts they can come pick up. We have a suggestion program when employees are working on a project that will be something that we can use for the city. They can make X number of dollars on that, and some of them are pretty high dollars. We have, as you know, the wellness part of it. We have all kinds of incentives for those, but there are all kinds of programs that we have. But at some point in time, people start looking at, can I keep up with the cost of living? And when we actually offer the one-time shots, it doesn't necessarily provide that security.
On these gifts, so do they not have to pay tax on
Yep.
gifts?
Mhm.
That's what I was thinking.
Yep.
Well, we do Christmas bonuses,
Yeah, we do.
and we should. I'm
Yeah,
not playing that down at all. Usually we try to give some extra days and holidays if we
Yeah,
can.
yeah, we do.
So we want to do what's right.
Yeah, and you do. There are lots of programs, but you have to understand when people are struggling with the cost of living, even though we get the one-time
Yeah.
shots, it's probably already spent before they get it.
I understand.
So, and that's just where we are, because the city has always been really good to the employees. It's just that we got into the slump there where we don't want the performance, which is what it is, to be something that holds up the total budget.
I've got one question. I know I wasn't here at the last meeting, and I know that it was approved for a 3% cost of living raise for pretty much everybody, but about 15 people or so. Am I correct?
Yes.
And I think that Councilmember Jordan had asked, it was only about $60,000 difference. And, you know, I think that as a goodwill thing, that we need to include everybody in that 3% increase. I just think, and I understand the point behind it, I just think it's not fair not to include everybody, because they're the ones that have had our backs all this time. And I just think it's fair to go ahead and include them. It's only about $60,000. And I will make a motion if that's what I'm going to make a motion.
As I understand it, when that motion came, and when Councilman Jordan suggested that, it would have been retroactive.
That was 1.5.
The 1.5, and then in July, depending upon what the budget was, another increase then. But it didn't carry.
No, my thing is to include them in the 3% cost of living, just like everybody else.
Well, I agree with that too, but
Tell them when you second the motion.
I don't know that in a second.
Okay.
I have a motion to second. Any discussion? Well, I don't have, I think everybody needs a raise sometime or another, but I think the survey you're talking about will make answer that question.
Yeah, it will, it'll probably say the same thing, but one of my points here is where, and I like the motion, but also going forward, where do we become really consistent in making sure, even, and it doesn't matter of the percentage sometimes, it just matters of the consistency, so employees know that they have something to look forward to. And they know that maybe the budget's bad the next time, doesn't mean that everything's gone, it just means you're still on a scale for performance and something to remember.
Well, I look forward to the survey myself. That's what I would
Well,
think.
my motion is to go ahead and include the ones that were not included into the 3% cost of living, and then we can go ahead and look at the study and everything else. But I just think they're the ones that have stood behind us, and I don't think it's fair to exclude them. And I know they make more money than the everyday man, but they have some of the same issues, and they have a lot more accountability, and I just think it's fair to give it to everybody.
Okay, have a motion to second. Any
Mayor-
more discussions? Yes.
Mayor, the only thing I wanted to make sure, so we have this for clarity purpose, this is not an attempt to amend the prior, this is to add.
Add them to
So this
it.
is a separate motion entirely, it is not an attempt to reconsider, it is.
No,
It
it's
is.
just to add the additional people that were not included in the first. So that's all it is. the
So it would be
3%.
under the same terms and conditions which we were able to determine from the staff perspective. That would be effective July 1,
Right.
is that?
Any other discussion?
Only discussion that I would have is that, is this. you know, we're sitting here, we did in the last strategic meeting, we're in this one, we're planning another one, maybe another one. We're hearing from every department. We know we have issues with this budget already. We knew that before we ever started budget planning, before we ever even heard of it. Now, I've yet to hear a department that doesn't need more employees, that doesn't need more pay, that doesn't need something. We have no idea where we are in the budget, how much underwater we are in the budget, or anything else. So I think that, you know, I'm not in a position to want to vote for any. The main reason that I voted the way I did in the last meeting was because I felt as though, you know, if we were going to not do, and what I had heard from most people is they did want a COLA and not a bonus, employee that is. And so the reason that I voted for it and the way it was presented to me was just that I felt like we had management people who were properly compensated. And this was just a way to include for our rank and file help, and that would help. And it would help us to meet any shortfalls on the budget by not including other people. So nothing in my mind has changed at this point. So I'm not voting for that motion. And I really think that we're all getting a little ahead of ourselves here in this whole process. Now, we've yet to see any numbers. All we're seeing is words. We don't have an idea about where we are in this budget. We know the reevaluation is coming. We've already seen that is down. You know, yes, everything stopped in 2007 or 8, whatever year you want to use, doesn't matter. We did what every other city in America, and many cities are still doing, and many of them ended up being worse than we were, like Detroit, Michigan, and having to declare bankruptcy. So we're not as bad off as one might think, and I hope and pray we're not as bad off as last meeting. I was slightly encouraged for the fact that these reevaluations were not quite as high as maybe some of the percentages that had been thrown out. So I just think we're all jumping ahead of ourselves on this thing, and I think we need to get down to some numbers. And I'd like to give every one of these, including fire, police, street, everybody else, everything they want. But the fact of the matter is, you're only end up at the end of this session with a finite amount of number, or you've got to increase taxes. And, you know, we haven't even got to that point where we can even look at numbers and know what we might have to increase in taxes without going and throwing some other, you know, locking in an increase of something right now. I just don't think it's common sense. I don't think it's the way to go about this process. I'm sorry.
The only thing is, it was only 60,000. In fact, I think it's a little less than 60,000 to add them in. That was the point, is that you had already approved a full amount, so it was only an additional about $60,000. You know, and I feel like they deserve it. So.
I thought it was about what it was, Mary? I don't remember exactly. I thought
just to add these in is approximately $60,000.
I remember something a little more, but I don't remember exactly what it was. Okay.
So that was the reason behind the motion, is to go ahead and include them in the 3% that y'all voted for.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? All opposed?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next item.
Any other questions for Deborah? If there are no other questions for Deborah, should be followed by Lisa.
You guys ready? Okay. Good afternoon. I'm here before you today to discuss master plan implementation. I do have a lot of information, so I'll be as quick as I possibly can. But in today's world of fast-paced change, new technology, and complex pressures causing fast growth or decline, a long-term plan gives communities a better edge in maintaining what they value and arriving at future goals. The city does have a multiple master plans throughout various departments that range from fire and water resources to planning and park and recreation. Today we're going to talk about just a few of the city's master plans within the planning, downtown, and park and recreation departments. I'd like to provide an outline for today's presentations. We'll first discuss what are master plans, master plan benefits, a few current master plans, implementation, and why implementation of the master plans are important. Master plans are long-term planning documents that look 20 to 30 years in the future. They establish the framework and key elements of the community and reflect a clear vision that has been created and adopted through an open public process. Master plans identify civic goals and the public's aspiration for projects and defines a realistic plan for implementation. Master plans are planning documents in the sense they are flexible and they provide partnerships, unlike ordinances, law, or regulations, and they also provide guidance for decision-making, such as yourself and staff. Master plans provide many benefits for a community. For instance, master plans provide informed direction and goals for the present and future well-being of a community. They provide information, analysis, and therefore a better basis for decision-making. For instance, the land use plan for planners is our primary everyday tool that we utilize to base all our recommendations and decisions on how the future, how the city grows and develops in the future. Master plans does help to avoid conflict and incompatible land uses. For instance, if you have a land use plan, if you don't have a land use plan or you have an outdated land use plan, development can become haphazard. Master plans do provide certainty and predictability to developers, businesses, and residents. So if you have a master plan, developers have a clear direction of how the city wishes to grow and develop in the future. So that provides a comfort for developers to invest in our community. The planning process for most master plans also contain a public involvement component that provides various opportunities for public input, outreach, and education. So these plans, most of these master plans are community driven. So you have that support from the community that most likely drives the plan to come to fruition and be implemented. A majority of grant funding opportunities requires municipalities to have a master plan in place. A couple of examples of that is the Park and Recreation Trust Fund grant requires municipalities have a park and recreation master plan in place before they can be eligible for funding. And also, in order to become a member of the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization and compete for transportation dollars, every municipality is required to have a land use plan in place in order to be a member. Otherwise, you forfeit your membership and your ability to have transportation dollars. A few plans that we'll briefly discuss today is the Downtown Monroe Master Plan, the Park and Recreation and Greenway Master Plan, Concord Avenue Area Master Plan, and then last, the Monroe Land Use and Transportation Master Plan. The Downtown Monroe Master Plan began in 2007 due to concerns of downtown's decline and lack of vitality and investment. The purpose of the plan was to counteract the impact of lost retail and restaurants and develop downtown as a destination. Along with the Downtown Master Plan there was an implementation action plan as part of that project, and the developed strategies that were identified in order to implement the master plan. Some of those that have been accomplished to date include the development of the Catalyst site, the Monroe Hardware Warehouse, the apartments. That was about approximately a $6 million investment. The Center Theater was purchased as part of the implementation. The downtown expanded their incentive program offerings to include Pronto, Meet Me Downtown, facade rehab, and mixed-use development. And then the Joffrey Hotel lot was beautified. The downtown events have been now are in partnership with the Park and Recreation Department. And then there were strategic property acquisitions that took place in Five Points area and then the corner lot at Lancaster Avenue and Old Charlotte Highway. Future implementation strategies that remain to be include the streetscape improvements along Main Street. That would include furniture, benches, trash receptacles, and I think that's approximately $100,000. There's still a couple of key property acquisitions to implement the plan. One is the Sykes property and adjacent parcel, and that's the produce stand across from JB's Produce on Old Charlotte Highway. This would serve to expand the Belt Tonawanda Park and improve the gateway for the area, and I think the proposed budget for that is $180,000. And then another property to acquire would be possibly the Chirino's property, and that is the Hispanic nightclub across from the site's produce center. And this has been recently discussed amongst staff at possibly obtaining in order to serve as the entry to the greenway, and maybe put a parking lot there with a kiosk area. And it would also improve the gateway for the Old Charlotte Highway. Not sure how much that would cost or how much discussion's taken place with that. In order to rehab the Cine Theater, that would be a public-private partnership of approximately $4 to $8 million. And then there's the installation of public art, and that cost varies based on the type of piece of art that will be installed within the downtown. Another implementation strategy would be to develop the Joffrey Hotel site. We attempted to do this several years ago when staff released the request for proposal to solicit developers to develop the Joffrey Hotel site. Since the city owns that property, we were offering it for $1. We did have a developer on board, but since the downturn in the economy, that project kind of fell down the wayside. The new senior center of $2 to $4 million, and then a large capital project is the conversion of Franklin and Jefferson Street to two-way. The design of that is about $1 million, and then the construction is $10 to $12 million. Another plan that is currently being developed or updated at the moment is the Parks and Recreation Greenway Master Plan. The purpose is to develop a course of action to plan for immediate and long-term recreation needs for the community, and the goal is to evaluate the existing recreation needs and to determine any future recreation needs. And I think the plan would look at recreation programs and facilities, parkland and open space, greenways and pedestrian activity, and then also look at any zoning or land use tools or policies to put in place in order to implement these strategies that come out of the update of the plan. The status of this plan is that staff has engaged Stewart Engineering in April 2014 to assist with the update of the plan. To date, 5 community engagement sessions have been held in order to receive public input regarding the plan update. Several surveys have been conducted via phone, mail, internet. Draft plan is complete and under staff review and is proposed to be presented to the Park and Recreation Advisory Board in April and Council for adoption in June. One plan that's currently being developed within the planning department is the Concord Avenue Area Master Plan, formerly known as the Kerr Street Plan. This project began in 2005 due to complaints and concerns regarding the blighted conditions of the Kerr Street area. This was discussed at the Land Development Committee regarding the conditions of the blighted Kerr Street area, and determined that the best course of action would be to develop a small area plan and redevelopment plan. The goals of the small area plan redevelopment the purpose was to improve the aesthetics, safety, viability, and appeal of the Kerr Street area through a comprehensive small area redevelopment plan. The comprehensive small area plan basically looks at land use, aesthetics, urban design, and transportation. And then the redevelopment component basically focuses on the core area of the study area, which is the Kerr Street area, and that would be redevelopment activities of acquiring property, recombining lots to invest in and improve or revitalize. Some of the goals, which I won't go over all of those, were to develop new and improved housing stock, revitalize properties, and to create an attractive entrance to Monroe. The Concord Avenue and Skyway both serve as gateways to the downtown. And this plan would also establish catalyst areas for improvement. The status of the plan development for this project is staff has contracted with Kimley Horn and Associates. It's a national planning and engineering firm to assist with the development of the plan. A series of public meetings and public workshops were conducted in order to better understand local values and objectives. The public input that was received is what developed the redevelopment strategy for the study area. The draft concept plan is complete and under review, and an open house is scheduled this spring and adoption for council this summer. Last plan we'll discuss today is the land use and transportation plan. This is currently being developed within the planning department, is at the preliminary stages. The city did adopt its first land development plan in 2000. It's not been updated for about 15 years, so it doesn't reflect a current community vision or respond to changes in the market conditions and development patterns that have happened over the last 15 years. And also this will develop the city's first transportation plan. Purpose of the plan is to update the land use plan to clearly identify and describe the desired growth and development over the next 20 to 30 years. This will also create an innovative transportation plan that recognizes the relationship between land uses, market forces, and transportation. The intent is to develop a plan that provides for diverse land use patterns, and then provide an expansive multimodal transportation network. And when I mean multimodal, I mean not just highways, but pedestrians, bikeways, and public transit. Goals, some of the goals are to develop a mix of different types of land uses, create a diverse range of housing options, a transportation network, and provide some catalyst projects. The status of the plan development, we've contracted with a consulting firm to assist with the update. We've established a technical committee that is made up of staff, and we've also established an advisory committee that's made up of various members of the community. Our next step is to hold the first meetings to kick off the project. So for master plan implementation, most master plans include an implementation action plan that provides a framework for achieving the city's desired future vision, community goals, and strategies. Successful implementation of master plans depend greatly on the ability of local, private, and government agents working collaboratively together to implement the plan. Implementation action plans, basically they summarize recommendations from throughout the plan. They typically provide a time frame for completing the action items. Sometimes they provide potential funding sources, and then they also determine who's responsible agencies to implement these plans. And just because we have the master plans and implementation doesn't always mean that the city is responsible for implementing the plans by themselves. Let's see, the intent of the action plan is twofold. One, it provides decision makers with the blueprint for implementation so we can track progress and schedule future improvements. And also clearly defines action items that enable the city to identify public and private investments. The structure of the implementation action plan does not require all recommendations be completed in unison. Instead, the recommendations promote flexibility and partnership between the city and development community to implement the plan in phases as development occurs and funding sources become available. Some examples of recommendations that were from the downtown master plan included the hiring the downtown director, establish an advisory board, and considering branding downtown. As I mentioned before, responsible parties and timeframes are also identified within the plan. The timeframes are phased over a 20-30 year timeframe. Some are short-term action items, some midterm, some long-term. An example of the short-term action item would be to adopt a master plan and consider policy recommendations. For instance, once a land use plan is developed, our first step would be to actually adopt the plan. So that's a short-term action item that does not require any funding. The next step will be to revise the Unified Development Ordinance to provide requirements to serve to implement the land use plan. A midterm example would be to improve wayfinding signage for an area, for instance, the downtown or the Concord Avenue area. A long-term example would be some type of capital project, transportation improvement such as road extension or intersection improvement, that, as is the downtown, the two-way conversion of Franklin and Jefferson. Some implementation plans include a section on identification of capital projects and sometimes might include cost estimates for the construction of those projects. But there are also some hidden costs of failing to implement the master plans. Not only is it important to develop the master plans, but it's more importantly to see that they're implemented because they outline the city's vision and goals for the future. Because once we develop, if we don't serve to implement it, they're just pretty books that sit on the shelf and they don't serve a purpose. Also, if master plans are not implemented, the city loses the community vision and goals, resulting in losing community support and leadership and clear direction for the future. So basically, we lose sight of where we're going and how we're going to get there. Because as I mentioned before, All these master plans have a public involvement component, so they are driven by the public, they're supported, they have an interest in the master plans getting implemented. If we don't implement and prioritize the implementation, then we lose that community support. Also, if the plans are not implemented and we're not provided the necessary amenities and choices that draw residents to the community. So all people know that people move into a community that provides amenities and choices such as sidewalks, bike lanes, greenways, quality parks, housing choices, restaurants, shopping, and entertainment. So if the amenities and choices are not provided, we'll continue to experience a limited amount of growth that will result in an investment decline. Investment occurs only where the community is growing, and the community only grows where we're provided amenities and choices. Monroe has recently experienced some investment, such as the Holiday Inn, Glenmark, Olive Garden, Buffalo Wild Wings, and Longhorn, but we've also experienced a decline such as Big Bob Gibson, Turbo Mecca, and the movie theater. So we also lose our competitiveness. If we don't serve to implement the plans, we're not providing amenities and choices. So in turn, we're not growing. We're losing our competitive ability to market ourselves to the surrounding communities. So once again, it's not only important to develop the master plans, but to see that they're implemented. Otherwise, Monroe is going to continue to experience a limited amount of growth. Why? Two reasons this is being presented today is to, one, raise awareness to council, staff, and the community that the city does have various master plans that are being developed and will be coming up for adoption within the next fiscal year. And two, with the master plans comes an implementation action plan that potentially becomes funding requests and dollars for the next FY 2017 budget. As mentioned before, the implementation action plan will be developed in phases over 20-30 years, so we will not be requesting that the plans be implemented in 1 year or the funding requested in 1 year. That kind of concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer questions.
I have a couple. Down on Lancaster Avenue, Charlotte and Lancaster Avenue, are we going to do something with that lot this spring? I mean, to beautify it to some extent? Or do you know?
Unfortunately, I do not know. Brian Bourne was scheduled to kind of give this presentation with me. He is at a conference this week, so I can certainly ask that information and follow up to council as a whole, via email or however we need to do so.
Yeah, I'd like to see something done, and I know we've talked about it. But if we do bare minimum, it's going to make it look much better, because it really needs something down there. Right there, that gateway as you talk about. Mm-hmm. And you talk about the old Joffrey Hotel site.
Right.
I wonder if we can have any plans, or we're going to go back out and try to do a deal like we did before, to try to get somebody to come in on that site.
That is the intent, and that is one of the implementation strategies of the downtown master plan. Brian Bourne and I have kind of mentioned possibly bringing that back within the near future and do the same type of request for proposal, possibly offer it for a low amount, and that would be at the direction of the council, of course, but to try to get that site developed.
Well, I think if whatever deal we could make, it'd be a plus for our downtown area.
Right.
And we talked about the Skyway as an artery coming into town. And I guess they tired of hearing me talk about those lots there on the corner of Miller there across from the farmer's market. We need to do something to see if we can get some kind of builder or contractor to come in there and make a deal with us on that land there, to put something there. That would really help beautify the Skyway. And we've talked about it, and of course, I know it's up to the council what they want to do. But we need to move on that, because it's just sitting there. And if we don't do something, it's going to be sitting there again next year.
Well, I know that we discussed the lot last year, and it was supposed to be, I think it was during the budget process, and I think it was going to come out of fund reserve. And I want to think it was $60,000 to $80,000 to do the corner lot on Lancaster Avenue.
How much?
60 to 80. Was it not? It was, yeah. So.
Well, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
That was it. I think that was part of, we had to look at what we wanted to do with fund balance, and that was included in there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Am I right?
And if we don't have that kind of money, if we just do something, of course, I'd like to fix it and walk away from it. But if you go down and look at it, and you very well may have you go home that way problem, you can see it, it's in dire need for something on that corner of Shaw Avenue and Lancaster Avenue. We're in dire need of that. And again, I think if we move on some of these things, at some point we'll get to the end of it and beautify it. But if we don't move on some of it, then it's gonna be like this next year.
Mayor, I move that we get staff to look at that spot on the corner you're talking about and get a budget of what it would cost to landscape it and bring it up to a decent appearance.
You talking about Shaw Avenue? I think they've got that.
They've got it, I think it was 60 or 80,000.
It's a matter we need it, and that's what I don't know. I could sell the building on there for $68,000. But I'm just saying, we need to do something there in that corner. And we've talked about it. I know Recreation has got plenty to do, and I'm not saying they're lagging by no means. It's just, but we need to get on that corner, and I hope that we can look at the Skyway Drive coming in, as well as the lot downtown and some other things. And I know we all got that in our thoughts.
You could plant grass and put out a few trees and shrubs and improve the looks 99%. I don't see how it would cost that. Oh my gosh.
They've already drawn up plans for it, if I'm not mistaken. They've got what they want to put there. That's Brian.
Staff, I'll get with Brian.
I know,
And
and
we'll
I-
evaluate it, and staff will see if there's any funding or portions that possibly could be implemented.
And I know that he already knows this. I know what he's gonna say. Well, I'm gonna get to it when I can, but, and I know they're busy. But some of these things that's really the eyesore, we need to look at those first and put something else second.
Okay.
Just my 2 cents.
Well, thank you.
You sound like that line on the food.
That's why I said it's my 2 cents.
No other questions for Lisa? Chris and Peter are up next.
We have a motion on the floor, you just said it.
Oh, yeah, I did. I put one that we, staff at least, you apparently already got a budget, but that's way out of, to me, that's way out of line. We can do something way cheaper to make that corner.
Would you like to rescind that motion and just make that a comment?
Yeah, that'll be.
They already got it in the paper.
No more motion, public comment.
Okay.
Good idea, Fred.
Very good.
Okay. Great. Mayor, Council, Mayor Basin, or sorry, Manager Basin. It's a pleasure to present the opportunities for economic development in Monroe and economic growth going forward. Today, we're going to talk about 4 areas: spec buildings, the Sutton Park redevelopment recapitalization strategy, and the industrial park number 3, as well as the airport as a catalyst. Looking first at the spec buildings, there's basically 3 questions that sort of hang out with those. Is, why do we need to build them? Are these buildings, what have they done for Monroe? And is there a day that we do not need to build them further? So why do we need to build them? When you look at these buildings and what they have done, it is such a catalyst for job creation. It allows us to really target and craft the building to the type of companies that we want to bring in here to help raise the average wage in the area. Also, it allows us to put in companies that have high capital value as well as high electric use so that they bring back revenue right into the city. And then they're sustainable. These companies that we're bringing in are the ones that will grow here. They'll add new jobs and continue to make investments, so add sustainability to the local economy. What have these buildings done? Let's look at number 1. $60 million+ and over 300 jobs at Griner Bio 1. Record USA is over $7 million and 70 jobs. Glenmark, the most recent. Just to start, that company's at $30 million and 41 jobs. That's nearly $100 million in our coffers and over 400 jobs being created just from 3 buildings. Is there a day that we see that we don't need them anymore? I would think that we can all agree that York County, Cabarrus County, Cleveland County, North Carolina, all have done fairly well. And they're still forcing buildings right now, trying to get these things built to help for the demand that's out there. So I don't think there's ever a point that we do not need to have some product on the ground available to sell. Looking at the next steps, we're trying to engage the private sector right now to build a spec building in the Monroe Corporate Center. If that effort does not work, then we will come to the city, hopefully around the May timeframe, and ask to begin spec number 4. So that's basically it with the spec buildings.
Chris,
Yes, sir.
one thing too, you didn't mention is the tax dollars it brings in and the amount of utilities that it goes our system. So that every time we build one, we're getting tax dollars that's going to help pay for services, and also we're helping Don Mitchell and utilities.
Absolutely. Yeah, that $100 million of investment generates a good tax load, as well as particularly Briner, and what they're doing and what Glenmark should do to the electric. Sutton Park, again, why focus on Sutton Park? What was the goal of really trying to recapitalize this area, and where do we start? Sutton Park is a historical center of manufacturing in North Carolina, Monroe. It is approximately 40 manufacturing companies employing 5,000 people. It still has investment and job creation occurring, but it has obvious detriments. Unoccupied and underutilized structures, things that are too short. There's a lot of textile style or older manufacturing architecture that's there that has limited ceiling heights, which is not conducive to modern manufacturing. Vacant parcels, we can look to combine and create larger tracts to attract new investment, and a general sense of decline as you enter the areas. So the redevelopment will create significant new tax base and new job creation there. What was the goal? When we started this effort, was to catalog and analyze the parcels from an economic point of view, economic developer's point of view, in the study area, roughly 3,000 acres when you look at it. So large area. We identified catalyst sites for the best opportunities for redevelopment and estimated the impact for that, as well as suggested gateways and branding for the area. So the consultant came up with a map that identified these areas, working with our office, and basically we have combined what you see here, 1A and 1B, into Catalyst Site 1, 2A as the second Catalyst Site, and Site 3 as the third Catalyst Site. Site 2B just has too much of a concentration of residential, and it's too expensive to look at the redevelopment of that toward an industrial, at least at this time. So where do we start? Well, we've already engaged, the city has, with the Cooper site. Currently, we're at the second stage of the brownfield process, moving toward the development, and Cooper site is part of the Catalyst Site number 1. Staff analysis and the consultant's analysis shows a build out of 1.3 million square feet of space, $75 million of tax base, approximately 2,000 jobs, with an annual salary of $50 million that sits just within the site. So most of this land, which also makes this a sort of the low-hanging fruit, most of this land is undeveloped. It's close to all of our utilities, and it's got great access, great road access. So, as we move forward, this is definitely the place we want to start. Next steps is to work with the Apex folks to complete the brownfields agreement, get them to demo the building, and return it to a shovel-ready site. Have the city take possession through the agreement that we have with them is to pay $300,000 toward the demolition of the facility. That basically gives us 84 acres at $3,500 an acre. You can't buy any land in Union County for $3,500 an acre. So from that, we'll market and plan out the acreage for the industrial users. Any questions on that?
Do you see a spec building there, or are you gonna just put it out for someone else?
That's definitely, once we get to that point, it could be a possibility of trying to recapitalize this area. It's too important not to try to get it back at a higher tax rate. So, yeah, spec building could definitely be an option in that area.
How many acres are there?
Within the study areas are at 3,000. Within catalyst site number 1, there's 84 with Cooper, but then there's an additional 200 or so acres.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about,
Yeah.
the Cooper site.
Yeah, so when you look at Cooper and the additional land attached to it, it's a significant site.
When will the Cooper site be ready to market? Because I know it's going through the EPA and all that.
So we're in the second stage now, and Majid is working with our consultant at Parker Poe to drive that through. But it's probably in the next year, hopefully 2 years at the most.
So that you could come for a spec building on that.
Yeah, some point in time. Because once they get through the Brownsfield, that's their first requirement that Apex has to do. The second requirement is to demo the building. Take out all the pits. I mean, if you remember, that place was a hammer forge facility to make horseshoes, to crescent wrenches, everything else. Those foundations are in the ground 20 feet, 15 feet. So all that concrete has to come out that brings the site back so that it's eligible for us to put a project on. So it's still got some work.
Well, if we could get that first building in there, maybe some will follow.
Exactly.
And I think that's important, and of course, we all know that. So maybe we'll get some fruit from that.
That and the bypass would be a key for it.
Yeah, okay.
And finally, looking at industrial park number 3, why another park? Where should it be, and what would the targets be? Why another park? The Monroe Corporate Center has about 147 acres left that we control. That's probably 5, maybe at most 7 companies that will come into that park. As the economy warms up, particularly if we start putting some private spec space or public spec buildings in that park again, it's going to turn pretty quickly. We'll start to consume most of the usable acreage. So we're going to be out of industrial land, at least that we have some control over. Arrow Point Industrial Center is another project that we have another project coming that we need to talk to you about that may actually eliminate that entire park. And also the industrial land in general, as the bypass starts to materialize, is going to have other things competing for it. So residential, retail, other things, and we're going to need to find ways to protect that land for our industrial base. So where should it be? We've talked about this in the past. Several of you are aware of where sort of we're targeting, but we don't want to talk about that in open session. But it basically we need to position it so we can take advantage of the bypass and 74, centralize it within Monroe, take advantage of some of the great achievements of other departments. So the electric department working with the Union Electric Co-op has secured territory agreements. We need to make sure it's identified for that. Look at the Stewart Creek outfall that Russ has been able to utilize and really get some heavy sewer capabilities in the area, as well as the natural gas pipeline, which is one of the greatest things Monroe has done in a long time. So what are the targets? Obviously, precision manufacturing. That's our baby. That's where we have a competitive advantage over most of our neighbors. So we'll stick with that. What this opens up, particularly if we can use the bypass, is distribution. Something that Monroe has never been able to utilize and go after, because the road systems just weren't designed for that, where you can see a 300, 400, 500,000 square foot distribution center. And then also office. Monroe has a harder time attracting larger office space because they want that frontage. They want the visibility of a larger road. And so that's what bypass brings for us around this area that we're targeting. Next steps, obviously, is to talk to the landowners in the area that are targeted and try to secure that land as soon as possible. At least under some option agreement, just to control the land for the future, and also protect it from other uses that are not necessarily compatible.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor Kilgore. I'll compliment Chris's conversation here, presentation with giving the reasons as to show why the airport is a catalyst. And first, I'd like to help define what we're talking about in terms of the economic impact that the airport creates to the Monroe and Union County. We generate a great amount of sales directly from the airport itself. In terms of the over 100 based aircraft that we have in there, we have a base of lease revenue stream that comes in through there, the taxable revenue of the aircraft and the hangar improvements that are there, and then also the fuel sales and other services that are provided in there. The indirect impacts that come about from the airport are related to the airport-related firms and businesses that operate from the airport and through the airport, as in the users that arrive through our facilities to go into the local community. And then finally, we have that multiplier effect, which basically is the exponential increase that happens because of the airport's existence. Because the airport fosters this growth and activity through the community, we have more people that actually spend money within the community that came as a result of the airports. So the cyclic effect that has the three types of impacts working together is what provides that strength in economic impact. This is a chart that was taken from the State Economic Impact Study that was commissioned by the North Carolina Department of Transportation Division of Aviation back in 2012. And in this report, it states that the Charlotte Monroe Executive Airport generates over $22 million in revenue each year. And it fosters 70 jobs directly related to the airport and over 150 in general throughout the community. These jobs have a payroll of over $5 million. And as an example, Cyril Bath, who is an international aviation company that is located here in Monroe, and as a commitment to our community, invested $2.5 million and created 10 additional jobs. It's these types of jobs that translate into the direct, the indirect, and the multiplier economic impacts of our community. Oh, and I also should point out that in this study, it was also shown that there was over $500,000 in tax revenue generated to the city and to the county. And this is represented in business sales tax, local property tax, state corporate tax, and personal tax, based aircraft, and the total tax contribution to the airport. The role of the airport as a catalyst also has different roles it serves. It's an air transportation hub, obviously, that connects our community to all parts of the region, nation, and the world. It's 7,000-foot runway and the air navigational equipment, and now with the new customs processing facility, corporations can utilize the facility as a base to conduct business. This in turn supports its existence as a regional business stimulator, supplementing local business and the ability to increase their activities in the local area. It's a tourism generator. Its role as a community center for the population to learn about aviation and to be entertained. Great example was even just today, we had the Union County teachers, we were hosting them for an educational forum on aviation. And of course our annual air show also is another way that brings an economic impact to our community. Finally, it's a sustainable asset. Its growth plan is very much vetted in the sense of making sure that it supports good land use, and that has a good impact on our environment. So these factors together work also in unison to help spur activity and growth in the local community. So what's the next step? Continuing in the same theme that Chris was saying. Well, we have to work on our infrastructure, continue to get those grants from the federal grants and state grants to help redo and improve our infrastructures, like strengthening the runway, widening those taxiways. Do all that to make sure that we keep up with the needs, the operational demands of the facility. We use our roadmap, our airport development plan, to help guide and market the facilities to businesses in growth of hangars and based aircraft. This helps because it's a public-private partnership that we invoke and we instill so that we can increase the value of that air facility. And then finally, working with Chris with the economic development in terms of marketing it as a valuable community asset that will support the growth and activity. So all of this said, we are very much a catalyst for the community in terms of the growth and activity and we feel that it's an important asset that Chris can market. So.
So basically, just recapping, economic growth is what provides the financial resources for us to be able to put in all the necessary things to make Monroe a great place. Monroe's best opportunities to continue growth or to improve, or to help improve itself, is through the spec buildings, the recapitalization of Sutton Park, the development and securing of land for a future industrial park, and utilizing and leveraging the airport as a catalyst for growth.
Chris, I don't think a lot of people probably realize, I know Don Mitchell's here, explain to the council just how important Teledyne all that is to the growth of our natural gas and electric, just how big they are.
Teledyne, or ATI, Specialty Materials, is roughly 5% of the revenue of the natural gas department. Is that roughly correct?
Yes.
But they represent a substantial amount of gas that comes in through the gas line. So the city doesn't buy the gas and sell it to them. They basically get a transportation fee. So that's the reason that the revenue looks a little bit smaller, but they represent over 40% of the actual gas that comes through the piping system.
And aren't they bigger from Leicester City is bigger than Cornelius, Lincoln, and one other city called combined, they use more electricity?
The SAF facility at the airport, just that one facility, is approximately Lincoln, North Carolina. Just that one. So, they are the #1 taxpayer. They're the second job creator, very shortly behind Tyson. They're the #1 electric user, #2 gas user. They're phenomenally important to Monroe.
Chris, thank you. In the interest of time, Mayor and members of City Council, Chris Anthony, thank you. I would ask if we slice out some time to hear one of the SWOT presentations, and that'd probably be about all the time that we have. So if you would indulge me, I'll invite Russ to the podium if you could. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure, which one of those, Russ?
Mayor Kilgore, City Council members, thank you for the opportunity to share some strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the Water Resource Department. Start with strengths. First and foremost, we have a very dedicated professional staff with broad skills, capabilities. We get a lot of work done with the forces that we have. We've been able to grow that expertise with our career ladder program, and that human capital allows us to provide the quality service, effective service to our citizens. Next, we provide a life-sustaining service. People get up every morning and have to have water just for their basic needs. Next is customer service. We focus heavily on being prompt, efficient, friendly, cost-effective in our service delivery. And we haven't taken that for granted. I use the term service monopoly. People can't choose who they buy the water from. They're stuck buying it from us if they live in Monroe. But we don't take that for granted. And the things that we've developed to show that, we have written best business practices, because we want to strive for excellence in each thing that we do. We also have a continuous improvement business model that challenges our staff to innovate and find ways to improve, do things better. And we are also using our performance measures to benchmark with other utilities. And then lastly, we have very low water and sewer rates comparatively. In the 2014 League of Municipality benchmark survey that I just got, we are still over 81st lowest out of 510 on the water side, and we're 108th lowest out of 423 on the sewer side. So we're very much in the lower 20% of utilities across the state and the value that we're providing to customers. Next, we do have available water and wastewater capacity for growth, so that is a strength. And then we have practiced long-range and proactive utility planning using a 15-year versus a 5-year capital improvement plan. So we look further out than the 5 years, and also marrying that with our 15-year rate model. Okay, sorry, caught up with me. Next is our weaknesses. We've had a lot of growth in not just workload, but new programs. We've implemented new programs like our infrastructure renewal, pipe bursting programs. We've done that with pretty much the same staff. So that has challenged our staff, but when the staffing level and compensation stay about the same, that can start impacting morale as we're trying to do more with less. We have had challenges attracting and hiring our highest caliber candidates. I'll give you a recent example, and Deborah covered why that's so. It's a combination of competitive salaries, but also compression within our existing staff. Recent example, our water plant chemist, our top 4 candidates, we could not reach financial agreement with them. We ended up with the 5th, and that person has been approved. They start March 30th. But, and they're a good, solid person, but we had 4 better. And so that just shows it is a challenge to attract the highest caliber employees. Another weakness, we don't currently have a dedicated staff member for construction inspection, and we are making some requests related to that in the upcoming budget. And then we do see a need and a weakness. We could do a better job enhancing and expanding our public education efforts to really help people appreciate the value of water, what it means to get water. We shared with you when we gave council the fillable water bottles, you get 3,000 of them for $1. It's just still one of those great values that's still out there. So we could do more in that area also. We do have opportunities. We want to really build on our existing strengths to innovate our business practices. And this would include primarily a focus on technology. We see technology as the way to do more with less. We're asking all our staff to do more with less. Some examples of the technology we're using, and Phil has an opportunity to leverage our strengths into the future. We use our global positioning system to inventory our system assets, our GIS system for work planning and other asset management. We're using a lot of automation, both at the treatment plants, some of our pump station, where we're letting computers and automation control the process. That means we can do those processes with less folks. Or as we expand the complexity of those systems, do it with the same staff. Other technologies are closed circuit TV camera that we send down the sewer mains, do a condition asset, choose the worst main that needs to be put on the rehabilitation list. And then our trenchless programs have been a great use of technology, both on the sewer side, pipe bursting, and now our new water main pipe bursting program. Those are examples of how we've used technology to get more work done with the same or less staff. We want to continue to grow our staff. Our staff is our strongest resources, and our career ladder has been very successful, so we want to continue that. Enhanced public education, I mentioned that's a weakness, but it's also an opportunity. And then lastly, with the direction of City Council, grow Monroe, support Chris's efforts, other efforts with our available capacity. So we see that as a definite opportunity. And last, threats. Deborah covered this pretty heavily. The regular merit-based salary increases have had an impact on retention and recruitment, so that is a threat. Our aging infrastructure, we have a very large system. We have a good solid foundation of how we're replacing both water and sewer mains, but those things continue to be a high cost, so that is a threat as the funding mechanisms need to be continually identified. And we need to be looking out 15 plus years and doing that infrastructure replacement planning. A big one we've seen is the state political climate related to municipalities. This includes things such as service area restrictions, where the state has stepped in and tried to control municipalities. forced mergers of systems and also forced sale of systems. Unfortunately, we've been able to, with the help of other municipalities, resist most of those efforts, so we count on Mujib heavily as those come forward. The next thread is our future regulatory changes and the potential impact on rates. The most near-term thing that's coming up that I'll be sharing as we move into the planning and budget process is the unfunded mandate for nutrient limits at our wastewater plant. These are NPDES permit nutrient limits that they're focusing on point sources rather than the non-point source. And this could be impacting us as early as 2020 with process upgrades, very expensive process upgrades to remove primarily nitrogen and phosphorus. So that is a threat. And then lastly, terrorism and system security. We have to be constantly vigilant against any sort of act against our drinking water supply, any sort of public health impacts that could have. So that is the last threat. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Question, comment? Hearing none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Russ. I'd like to thank staff for another series of wonderfully superb presentations, and I appreciate the time that you took to get ready for them and deliver them to the City Council. Mayor and Council, I'd like to spend just 2-3 minutes emphasizing a few points from the presentations you heard today as you continue to evaluate strategies for resourcing different services and also making spending decisions. The session highlights. First, the 3 theme presentations, employee retention strategies. So the takeaways that I got out of that was that we should invest in training, supervisory development, and compensation. We have a number of nearby competitors, such as Charlotte, Matthews, Indian Trail, perhaps Concord, and then from industry through the regulated or non-regulated utilities, which each of these entities are going to invite our employees to come work for them if we're not competitively compensating them or competitively paying them. We should invest in the pay performance program and the classification and compensation study. Both of these items provide management with tools that we can use to incentivize performance and also use to evaluate those positions that are not being competitively paid. In terms of master plans, there are, the way I count, probably more than 4 master plans or conceptual initiatives that I hope will get your attention. In addition to the ones that Lisa spoke of, there's Scott Safety Property, Sutton Park, and Industry or Office Business Park number 3, all of which I think are in the mix. Although plans are subject to change, at some level I think they require buy-in for the long haul. In the absence of our buy-in, I don't think they're anything more than dust magnets. In terms of industry recruitment, acquisition, and airport as a catalyst, we should invest for growth to sustain our commercial tax base, and which I believe offsets the cost of a number of our residential services. We have near and long-term opportunities in the form of adding product through one or more spec buildings, or supporting the redevelopment of Sutton Park, which is probably an intermediate term initiative, and for the longer term, developing or creating a 3rd office park or business industry park, excuse me. I think each of these can advance our future as a place to live and work. The airport enables, it has features of a regional hub, it supports tourism, and also is an economic stimulator, supporting industry and soon customs traffic. In terms of the lone SWAT presentation that we heard today, water resources, we should adhere to best practices as a business. There's a staff deficit and lapses in investing in them, and also there's opportunities for growth of infrastructure via collaboration and partnerships. And lastly, the assets are reaching end of their life cycle and are going to require increasing levels of investment. Those are a few of my impressions of today's presentations. I'd like to conclude today's session by focusing your attention on the upcoming topics for April 7th. The two theme presentations are deferred maintenance and staffing challenges, and we'll pick up on those that we missed today and continue on into the enterprise and special revenue fund SWOT presentations. I invite your feedback. We provided a form for you to use. If you don't have time today, I do appreciate you filling it out and returning it to Bridget. And with that, I think that concludes mine and the staff portion of the session. I believe Bridget has got our meal in the kitchen to my left, and those that want to partake.
Council have any question, comment? Hearing none, I'd like to thank the staff and all who participated today. Lots of information we've got, and we do thank you for your time and all your hard work that you've put into that. At that time, I'll entertain a motion. Have a motion, do I have a second?
So.
All in favor? We adjourn.